Hey, listeners, welcome back to another episode. Hope you're all having a great day. Fall is kicking in here in New England. It's super beautiful outside. Leaves are changing. People are out picking apples and pumpkins, and it feels like it's a little early for fall in New England. I live north of Boston, but it's kind of welcome after we had a bit of a swelter at the end of August. So hope wherever you are, you're enjoying the season and life is good. My co-host Ayelet is taking the day off, so you've just got me. And this episode is going to be a little short. It's basically an explainer for episode 33. So for those listeners who are kind enough to follow all of our episodes, I felt like we lacked a little bit of accessibility on the details of the content in the last episode. And what I mean by that is episode 33 talks about Syndigo's acquisition of 1WorldSync. And we had two experts on. We had the head of corporate development, the former head of corporate development for Syndigo, and we had the former head of corporate development for Rhythm, previously Commerce Hub. Commerce Hub is, or Rhythm is the combination of Commerce Hub and Channel Advisor. They were really expert on the issues at hand, and we're all kind of in the business, if you will. And we were just a little too in our own zone. So let's get a little bit into the details of what this is about. We're all consumers. We buy things online. And when we go shopping on Amazon or the grocery website, be it Whole Foods, Kroger, Albertsons, when we're looking for products, we see pictures, we see descriptions, we see nutritional information, and you go further down the page and there's information about the length, width, and size of the product sometime. And that page that you're looking at on Amazon or a retailer website is called a PDP, which is slang for product detail page. An entire industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry exists to make that experience very, very transparent for the consumer. What are you buying? What is in it? How much are you getting? And I think everyone knows from having these experiences that when the information on the page is inaccurate, it's very frustrating because you buy something online and you get it and it's not at all what you expected. There's a huge industry in a lot of categories. It does nothing but basically help brands create the right images, create the right descriptions, optimizes the descriptions for search, and then actually has tools in place to help the brands analyze the pages in scale. What I mean, like many, many retailers at a time, to help them measure the accuracy and the adequacy of those pages and also benchmark them against competitor products. A whole industry exists for that. And so when you think about looking at, we'll just use Amazon as an example. If you look at a product detail page on Amazon, it's got the image, it has a description. You go further down and there's details buried. If you're a brand and you want to get that data on Amazon, you have to have somebody on your team who prepares all that data and writes all that content. Although, AI is getting better at it, you still want hands on it. If it's a food product or a regulated product or has some sort of controls around it, then sometimes someone highly trained has to prepare that data or a lawyer has to look at it. There's a lot of stuff that goes into getting that product on the detail page. And there are tools and solutions in the market called product content syndication or PIMS, which is product information management tools that are used to store that data for an organization. We'll just use Coca-Cola as an example. If you're Coca-Cola, you have thousands of brands and thousands of products. You have to store that in a giant database, and then you have to have a tool or a solution for syndicating that data to the digital shelf, the PDP as we call it, the product detail page, so you as a consumer can see it. And then, of course, products change, seasons change, and updates need to occur. And so the software exists to update the product detail page so the consumer can see the updated information, can see the new ingredients to the product and all of those things. And so in our last episode, we were talking about two companies, Syndigo. And Syndigo, as I mentioned, Chris Barnes, our guest, had mentioned, Syndigo was essentially a roll-up of a bunch of different companies that included EdgeNet, which was the syndication, the product information storage and syndication solution for a lot of retailers like Walmart and Amazon and other retailers, and Nutritionix, which was a solution for managing nutritional information, and a whole bunch of other companies. Essentially, if it was on the product detail page or had to do with getting information to the page, Syndigo's business existed purely for the purpose for storing that information, organizing the information, getting the information to wherever it needed to be on the presentation layer in front of you on the product detail page. The company they acquired, 1WorldSync, we had talked about it being in the business of originally being in the business of providing a standard for how product details were shared between brands and retailers. So let's go back to the example of Coca-Cola. If you're Coca-Cola and you do business with Kroger, long ago, before these product information management solutions like existed in the commerce world, a retailer would say, well, in order to do business with me, brand, you must send me all the details about these products so I can put them in my circular, so you can go to the store and buy the paper and look at the items on sale and I can have the images for them. Or I want to make sure that when I'm advertising in the store, I have the right details. Or I wanted to make sure that I had an understanding about if I'm going to create a planogram, which is the plan for how all the products line up and appear on the shelf, I need to know the length, width, size, height, and all those things, and have merchandisers sit there and decide how many cans of Coke can go here and how many cans of Diet Coke can go here, and what do I have capacity for in my warehouse. Like every single little thing about these products and how they move from brand to retailer, there's a lot of data backing that. Even if it's like came out of the country, there'd be like data around the certificate of origin and where it was manufactured, and it goes on. And so Syndigo was much more in the business of what we call below the fold content. By below the fold, we mean, and even behind the supply chain data as well, which is like below the fold is length, width, height, pack, which is a lot of supply chain data, but then supply chain data itself, which would go to the supply chain teams at a retailer, would figure out like, how do we move these things around? How many pallets can we hold in a warehouse? So on and so forth. So Syndigo being responsible for the product detail page, the presentation layer, and 1WorldSync being responsible for all that data that maybe you don't see or is really at the bottom of the product detail page. It's the exchange of the two. And so by combining these companies, you now own the presentation layer, as we said in the episode, and the supply chain data, which is all the information that goes between the two. And I think the important thing to know is like, it would seem really obvious, like, hey, Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Budweiser and Diageo, which owns like an incredible amount of like all the liquor spirits in the world, like they would all have the exact same way of storing information and sharing this information with retailers, but they don't. Every brand has kind of their own taxonomy, the way that they organize product data, and every retailer has a very specific way that they want to receive it. And if they don't get it in a certain way, then there are a lot of problems. So they use the standard to say, here are suggested standards, but it's weird. No one ever really follows the standards. So again, Syndigo exists to basically deal with this standardless world. They did create standards for the retailers, and there's a whole bunch of nuance I won't get into about all of that, but they basically help solve the problem when there's a lack of standards. And 1WorldSync similarly helped retailers get the information standardized in the way that they need it from the brands, and they actually charge both sides of the table for the privilege of doing that. So a retailer would pay for 1WorldSync services to connect all the data to their product information management system, to their master data management systems, and getting that to wherever it needed to be. And the brands would pay for the pleasure of being able to share that information with the retailer and have 1WorldSync perform its services. In Europe, it's even crazier. Like in Europe, if you wanted to syndicate data to any retailer in Germany, you'd have to go through, basically a 1WorldSync looking like company, an Atrophy, which was acquired by 1WorldSync, or something like Marcant. These are businesses that essentially sit in between brand and retailer and purely make money off and exist for making sure that the data is exactly the way it's supposed to be before it gets to the retailer. This is a giant multi-billion-dollar industry. And so the bringing together of these two companies really created a very material sized business that controls a material amount of the market of trading that information. So explains why it was like a $1.2 billion acquisition of 1WorldSync, as we learned from some independent sources. So it sort of explains why this is a big multi-billion dollar deal that creates this large company that has a lot of potential to become something more if you can figure out what to do with it. So I thought for those that may have been lost in the details, I do this short piece just to explain what is we were talking about. I hope it was helpful, and we'll keep it super simple for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and following along and appreciating some of the nerding out that we were doing on the last episode. We'll see you on the next episode of the Inorganic Podcast. Take care.